Hello YouTube, Dave here again. Welcome to day number 2 of our 5-day look at the Dungeon Command series. Yesterday we looked at Heart of Cormyr, which was one of the first sets to come out. Today we're going to look at the set that came out alongside of it. We're going to take a look at the Sting of Lolth faction pack. So first thing we'll do is just kind of have a look at some of the artwork here on the box itself. It's got some really nice art. I mean, the art on all of these boxes is pretty amazing. So we got the Umber Hulk, the Drider, and we also have the Drow Wizard there. On the side, we also have the Drow Priestess, who you see on the front as well. And on this side, we have a preview of some of the miniatures. Oh, there we go. We have a preview of some of the miniatures that are contained within this box. We got the Drider, the Umber Hulk, and once again we got the Wizard there. Now what's interesting is that, honestly, the miniatures that they show are pretty fair representations of ones that are actually in the box. Now a lot of some of these products, the D&D Minis lines, when you would see pictures of the figures, they tended to be quite a bit more detailed in the pictures that you'd see here than they actually were in the product. So these ones look more or less like the actual miniatures that you're going to find inside, which we'll see in a bit. And just on the back here, so you see victory at all costs, which I think is what it would said on the back of the Heart of Cormyr. Let me just have a quick look, because I honestly forgot, even though it was just yesterday that I looked at it. No, actually it was victory and honor. So I never actually really noticed the tagline here, but it looks like they're different for all of them. So this is victory at all cost. Same phrase up top here. Dungeon Command is a head-to-head miniature skirmish game for 2 or more players. Assemble your warband, choose your battlefield, and crush your enemy. So the Dungeon Command Sting of Lolth faction pack contains a complete Drow warband, ready to play right out of the box. You can also create your own warbands using multiple faction packs and challenge other players. Some of them still have yet to actually ever do. And it just has the list of contents here, and just a picture of what some of the stuff looks like. So, now that we've had a look at the box, let's have a look at the contents contained within. Alright, so inside the box we have the rulebook, which is the exact same as the rulebook that came in Heart of Cormyr. The back cover is a different color, however. So we got that. And then we've got our tiles, which I'll show off here now. So these are the dungeon side. These are the just the shorter end pieces, and these are the wilderness sides here. Just kind of get an idea. And then the larger tiles. So this is tile number 1. And the wilderness side of that one, which looks like a little hole there, treasure. And this one here, I actually kind of like this one. I've never really looked at these too much, to be honest, but I like the water there. It's difficult terrain. You got the bridges that go across it. That's actually kind of cool. I'll have to keep that in mind if I ever use these for future videos or actually in the role-playing game. So let's go ahead. Where these are the Drow, I'm just going to set up the actual dungeon side here, because to me it makes more sense to encounter the Drow in a dungeon setting and not so much in the open daylight. So we'll put that there. Now we'll look at the 2 commanders that come with this. So the first one that we have is Alessandra Malistros. And she starts with a 13 morale, 7 leadership. Her special ability is Walls of Web. Add 2 to the speed of each spider and drow creature you control, which is basically just about everything except for I think 2 of the miniatures in there. Starts with 4 creatures, which is up from the 3 that Heart of Cormyr had for both their commanders, and has a starting order hand of 5. The information down here is a powerful priestess of Lolth. Alessandra is a cunning and ruthless leader who drives her allies to victory at the end of her whip. Cool and calculating, she prefers to outmaneuver her foes and draw her enemies into an ambush rather than confront them head-on. And her quote is, "The key to our victory is not simply through the strength of arms Lolth has blessed us with, but in making our enemies believe they have control of their actions." So, makes sense for a drow, very manipulative. And then the second commander that we have here is Kaltros the Sellsword. He has a starting morale of 12, so 1 less, but a starting leadership of 9, so he actually has a higher leadership to start with. His special ability is Sellsword, so whenever a drow you control collects a treasure token, you can draw 1 order card instead of gaining 1 morale. So this is an interesting ability, but you got to be careful because, again, he starts with a lower morale than the other commander. So you may want to use that ability sparingly, but it is still pretty cool. Creature hand of 3, starting order hand of 4. Kaltros is a drow mercenary who offers the services of his band of soldiers to anyone who can provide the coin to cover his price. He is an immoral scoundrel who is concerned only with lining his own pockets. Though he serves his people for now, there is no telling what tomorrow will bring. And his quote is, "Look, I'll make this easy for you. You tell me who to kill, I do it, and then you give me a big sack full of gold." So that's actually kind of cool. Almost reminds me of Bregan Diarth in Forgotten Realms, which is like the drow mercenary band led by Jarlaxle. If you read any of the novels or stuff like that, he's always been one of my favorite characters. So I kind of like this guy a little bit better, but adding the +2 speed to all spiders and drow is pretty good as well. Having the extra creature cards is good, but having the +2 leadership is also pretty decent because it typically gives you an advantage in terms of how many creatures or what type of creatures you can have at the beginning of the game. So if you have some high level stuff, you can actually get them out early on and still have a few fodder troops as well. So overall, I typically use Kaltros more than I would use Alessandra. But that's that. So now let's have a look at the miniatures themselves. So we will start with the generic ones that have multiple copies. See if I can pop them out here. So we've got, these are just the Drow, see, focus there. These are just the Drow house cards. So these are kind of your basic warriors. It's interesting that they did like a blood effect on their sword, but it's weird that it's at the base of the sword going about halfway up and that it's not like on the front of the sword. So kind of a weird decision there. I think it just ended up being an accident. I think they meant to paint the first part, but then again, the second one is the exact same. And I don't know how it's going to show up, but they did actually put red dots in for the eyes so they stand out a little bit. The shield, however, doesn't have any detail work done on it at all, which is a bit of a shame because you can see the spider design there. It would have been nice if they would have had like a silver dry brush that they put over that just to make it show up, or have silver on the inside and do like a black dry brush of the raised parts of the spider. But again, these are sort of your fodder troops, especially since they have silver on the inside, which is weird. But anyway, so that's them. And then we've got, next up we have the Demon Web Spiders. And I'm going to be honest, there's 2 of them. I'm not going to show both off because they're like the exact same. I got to be honest, I really hate spiders. I love Drow, which is weird. But I just, don't really like spiders a whole lot. The plastic minis usually aren't that bad, though. I don't mind them. But that's what that looks like. Again, very basic. Just has like the dark blue with the red eyes. These guys, again, they're just all in black, so they don't really have much coloration to them. Up next, another one of the creatures in sort of the dark blue. This is the Shadow Mastiff. So this one's actually, it's pretty cool, but again, very basic, but at least, and I don't know how well it's going to show up here, but at least it looks like it's been somewhat dry brushed on, so there's little recesses there that look black, whereas the rest of it looks blue, so they did a little bit. Again, the red eyes, and the white teeth seem to be the major amount of actual painting that went onto this. Alright, up next, this is the giant spider. So this set faction actually has 3 creatures on a large base. This is probably the first and the weakest of them. But again, and this actually has pretty much the dominant coloration of this warband. So it's got like the dark blue with sort of like the pinkish color. I'm sure there's an actual name for it, but I'm not aware of it. No detail on the face though, so they didn't actually differentiate the eyes, which is a bit of a shame, but again, you know, this is something that they tried to mass produce. So it's kind of understandable. At least they did little spots on the legs, so I like the way that one looks. Alright, up next we have the Drow Assassin. And this one doesn't have the blue color, but it does have sort of that pinkish color for the cloak. Hand crossbow, and I don't know if that's a spear or supposed to be like a trident or something, but they got this on their back as well. Again, the paint job's very basic. It's mostly just the hair, the silver on the weapons, and the cloak itself. Yeah, it must be a spear because it looks like you can kind of see. Second here. The one thing with showing off these miniatures is it is kind of hard to get it to focus, but it looks like there's actually, you can see like the shaft of the spear there, so that's interesting. Alright. Up next we have the Drow Drow Blade Master. And again, just very basic, but he has just like some silver chain that you can see there. And his swords, the hair, I actually like the way that they did the hair because it looks like they dry brushed it on. So you see a little bit more detail there than, say, with the Drow House Guard, which is just like pure white. So that's that one. Just a few left. Here we have the Drow Priestess. And again, she's got that dark blue coloration here on the robe with the purple or pinkish color. I'm really not good with naming colors. The armor itself is sort of a silvery, stands out from the black, and her eyes have the red dots. Again, her hair is pure white, so they didn't dry brush it, they just painted it pure white, but to me this works better with the female characters anyway than it did with the males. I would have liked the dry brushed look better for the house guards, but in this case, you know, looks all right as far as I'm concerned. Alright, and here we got the Drow Wizard. And again, just a very basic paint job, but as you can see, it does bear pretty decent resemblance to what you see on the packaging. The packaging didn't look like it was a much more detailed miniature. A few spots missed, like the front of its hair. It does have the red eyes though, and I do like the pose. I think it's actually a pretty cool pose for the wizard. And if I had to choose between this wizard miniature and the one that's in Heart of Cormyr, I think that this one looks better overall, my opinion. Alright, second to last is the Umber Hulk. The only difference between this and what you see on the front packaging, or on the side of the packaging, is they didn't paint this one's eyes. Now, I don't know if they're all like this. It may have just been one that was missed in when I got these. I mean, again, these were ones that came out right on release day. So it's possible that later versions of it had the eyes painted red. I haven't really seen too many other unboxing videos that show these off. But again, just sort of like a coppery look to it. But again, you know, pretty cool looking miniature. I like that one a lot. Now the last one I want to show here is the Drider. So I'm just going to see if I can zoom in a little bit here. So with the Drider, the only thing that I don't like is, if you look at the tray, most of the other miniatures just kind of pop in easily. The spots are perfectly sized for them. Like, for example, you can just pop the Umber Hulk right back in there. right? It snaps in, comes out easily. The Drider, on the other hand, whoops, is kind of squished in there. And I'll show what I mean by that, but I'm always nervous when I'm trying to take this thing out, that it's going to end up coming off the base because it doesn't pull out easily. So I always try to grab it by the base and lift it out, but it's only attached by those two legs. And let's zoom back out here now. So it's only attached by the back 4 legs, and you got to kind of smush it down to actually get it out. So that's not something that I like too much. As far as the miniature itself goes, it's not bad. Eyes are dotted red. It's got like the metal armor there, the sword. The paint job's one of the better ones in this set. Even though like things like the lags and stuff like that's just left as the black plastic that it was molded into. But that's that. Now if you look inside the tray, I don't know how well it's going to show up, but the back here actually slants. So you have to kind of smush it down to get it in there. So I think they could have done that better. Otherwise, like these trays are always great. It's just that one miniature in the entire line that has difficulties. But now that we've shown off the miniatures, let's just set the box aside here, and we'll have a look at some of the cards. Alright, let's start off with just a quick look at the ones for the D&D the cooperative board games. So it has all the different characters here, which is great. Drow Assassin, Giant Spider, the Drow Wizard has all their tactics, which is awesome. The Drider is actually kind of cool because you end up passing it around. So instead of one person controlling it, if it can't attack, or even after it attacks, you pass the card to the player on your right, so more people get to actually utilize this thing, which is pretty cool. And then you've got the Umber Hulk, and again, as with the other one, the card stock isn't the greatest, and the cards do warp easily. Now again, these were just sitting on my shelf, and these got like this almost the instant that I took them out of the plastic cellophane wrap that they were inside of. So this happened relatively early, within hours or days of opening the product, and at the time they were stored in my living room on top of my bookshelf. So it's not like they were in like a damp basement. I was on the 3rd floor of my apartment building. It wasn't really a damp area, but again, the cards just kind of warped like that. So that is one thing, again, that I will say is sort of a downside to these products. So now let's just have a look at the stat cards. I just kind of want to arrange these sort of in the order that I want to show them off and kind of discuss them. And I also want to put the like ones together. There we go. Alright, so let's start with our Demon Web Spiders. These are level 1. They have Dexterity as their stat. They have 20 hit points, which is better than the level 1 Elven Archers that we had in Heart of Cormyr. They have a melee attack for 10, speed of 7, and these guys here have an ability called Scuttle. I think I briefly touched on this in some of the earlier videos that I did in this series. So scuttling means that it's always shifting when it moves, and the significance of that is when you get into melee range, your speed is typically reduced to 0 unless you have something that lets you shift. Shifting is the only way to move when you're in melee contact. So the fact that this creature is always shifting means that they can still move their full speed even if they get into melee contact with an enemy. Alright, up next we got the Drow House cards. So these are level 2 with 40 hit points. They have, come on now. They have a ranged attack, Dexterity is their stat. They have a ranged attack that deals 10 damage within 5 squares, and a melee attack that does 20, speed of 6, and that's it, like no other special abilities. Then we got the Shadow Mastiff, which is a level 4 beast. 80 hit points, dexterity for their ability, have a melee attack that does 20, but it's speed of 8. But what's cool about this guy is he has the Shadow Stalker ability. So when you deploy this creature, you can place it in any unoccupied space adjacent to a wall. So unoccupied just means that there's no other miniature in there or like a treasure tile, because that would be considered to be an occupied space if there's like a tile or token in there. So they can appear next to any wall. Now, one thing to keep in mind, and something that we were actually doing wrong when I first started playing this game, is we were doing our deploy phase before our activations, which ended up being wrong. So we would deploy this thing if there was an enemy that was near a wall or close enough to a wall that they could deploy right next to it. We would do that and have it attack, and it didn't seem right, and it was just because we basically were doing the steps sort of out of order. So deploy takes place after activation, so you probably don't want to put this directly in melee with something, but you can still put it closer to some enemies to deal some damage without it taking a round or two to actually get to where the fighting is. So that's pretty cool. And then up next we got the Giant Spider. Level 3, dexterity based, 60 hit points, 20 damage on a melee attack, speed of 7, and it also scuttles. So it's always shifting when moving, and that's it. It's interesting that they didn't give them an actual web ability or something that they could do along those lines. As far as the base card goes, there's stuff in the order cards that we'll get to in a moment, but it's interesting that they did that. Alright, up next we have the Drow Assassin, level 4, dexterity based, an evil humanoid drow, 80 hit points. It has a ranged attack that deals 20 damage within 5 squares, melee attack that does 20 damage, speed of 6, and Hidden Blade. So at the end of this creature's activation, it can deal 10 damage to an adjacent tapped creature. So that's pretty cool. Basically what you want to do with this thing is after somebody's already been attacked, and if they used an immediate card to prevent some of the damage, then they would be tapped. So you would move them in, move the assassin in, hit it for 20 with a melee attack, and then at the end of its activation, it can deal another 10 damage. So you could potentially get 30 damage against something. Alright, up next is the Drow Blade Master. So he's only level 3 with 60 hit points, which, yeah, I guess 20 hit points per level makes sense. It's a humanoid drow adventurer. It's one of the few, I think, adventurers that is actually in this set, so I guess I was wrong. I thought Heart of Cormyr was the only one that had adventurers, but this set has them as well, although definitely not as many. He's got 60 hit points, like I said. He's got a melee attack that does 20, speed of 6, but he's got flashing blades, so whenever a target takes damage from this creature's melee attack, this creature can deal 10 damage to one adjacent creature. And then we've got the Drow Wizard. So level 2, 30 hit points, dexterity and intelligence. It's a humanoid drow and an adventurer, though that and the Blade Master are the only 2 adventurers in this set. Has a ranged attack for 20 within 10 squares, a melee attack that does 10, and a speed of 6. No special abilities from the Drow Wizard. Not even like the ability to utilize arcane portals, which is weird. I mean, like their tile set doesn't have arcane portals, so it makes sense from that perspective, but it still feels weird that the wizard has no ability. Alright, Drow Priestess, level 3, which seems kind of low actually, I'm not going to lie. 60 hit points, dexterity and wisdom, melee attack for 20, speed of 6, and she can summon spiders. So when deploying any spider creature, you can place it in an unoccupied square within 5 squares of this creature. So she can have the spiders appear near where she is, which again is great for having them in a place where they can be useful right away. Alright, last 2, Umber Hulk, level 5, strength and dexterity, has 100 hit points, has a melee attack for 30, a speed of 6, so it burrows, meaning that it goes underneath all terrain. So it can go underneath walls, underneath difficult terrain. It ignores all that, but it has to, when it's at the end of its turn, it comes back up to the surface, and it has to be completely in a space that's not occupied by a wall. And its attack, or its special ability is Confusion Gaze. So you tap this as a standard action, choose one enemy within 5 squares, and slide that creature 3 squares then make a melee attack that deals your melee damage. So basically you can draw somebody into the Umber Hulk, and it does its regular attack against it for free. So that's a way to kind of manipulate your opponent's position, and you can draw something that maybe they're trying to protect as well, which is kind of cool. And then the last thing that we have is the Drider, which is level 4, 100 hit points. It's an aberrant Drow spider, so you can actually use the Priestess to deploy this near her. She uses Dexterity, has a speed of 10, which is one of the fastest creatures in the game. Just a melee attack for 20, and is scuttling, so it's always considered to be shifting. So those are the stat cards. So now let's just have a look at some of the order cards that they have. Now again, these are just basically how they were the last time I used them, so duplicate ones are not going to be together. I may start doing that for the later videos, but here we go. So again, if you want to read what these do, you can certainly pause it. We have Close Call, Scheme, Firetrap, Sacrifice. This one's actually kind of cool because you can discard an order card to have this creature make a melee attack that deals plus 30 damage. So, you know, like to be 60 damage if you'd use it for the Umber Hulk, which is pretty cool. Stalk, another Scheme, which lets you draw order cards. Parry, Shadowy Ambush, again, nice attack that deals 50 damage. Web. This one has, so I mentioned before that none of the spider creatures have a web ability. They have this order card, which is web. It's level 1, requires intelligence, however it has spider affinity. So it means that any spider creature can actually use this action card or order card, even if it's not, even if they don't have intelligence. Like none of the spiders actually have intelligence, but they can use this. And what you do is you attach this card to one creature within 10 squares, so the creature cannot move or shift, and they have to tap to remove this card as a standard action. So they basically waste a turn to get this off of them. The saving throw card from Heart of Cormyr could be used to remove this as well. Then we got Spring Attack, Uncanny Dodge. So this one here is the answer to the Killing Strike, I think it was the name of it, from Heart of Cormyr, which does 100 damage. So this one you discard an order card to prevent all damage from a source. So this is the one that's usually used to combat the 100 damage attack, which I think would take out everything. Yeah, because I would kill anything in this warband. So that's that one there. I want to say there's 2 of them, but I'm not quite sure. Piercing Strike, Fairy Fire, which has Drow affinity, so again, similar to the Spider affinity, any Drow can use this, even if they don't have intelligence. You attach it to the target creature, and you deal plus 10 damage to it. So this is one that you definitely want to use a saving throw card on if this hits you, because that's an extra 10 damage on top of whatever attacks you're taking. So it can get pretty devastating. Then we got Feint, which taps a creature, so it's also a minor action. So this one works really well with the Drow Assassin. You play this card to tap them, move her up into melee, deal her 20 damage, and then at the end of her turn, deal the extra 10. So that's a pretty good one to have as well, and I think there's 2 of these in here as well. Stealth, Lolth's Blessing, requires Evil. Attach this card to this creature. This creature's controller draws 1 extra order card during the refresh phase. So that's pretty good. That's extra card drawing, which always comes in handy. Another Piercing Strike. Another Spring Attack. Deep Wound. Another card that gets attached. Deal 10 damage to this creature at the start of its controller's turn. Another candidate for saving throw. Vial of Poison. So you attach it to one of your own creatures, remove the card to deal plus 30 damage with their next melee attack. Sneak Attack. So this is make a melee attack that deals 100 damage. Creatures you control that are adjacent to the target can assist with this action. So you notice that it's level 6. None of the individuals in here are level 6. So to utilize this ability, the closest is the Umber Hulk, but in order to utilize this ability, you have to have a second creature at least tap with you in order to assist in activating that power. Not a huge fan of that. I think that they should have designed it so that all these cards can be used without the assist action, especially since Heart of Cormyr has a character high enough level to use their Killing Strike, which is only level 5. So having a similar ability for the Drow faction that's a level higher, and none of their units can cast it on their own, not a big fan of that, without other order cards or without assisting them. So I think that was sort of the only kind of bad design, I would say, in this set, or with this faction. So we got another Web, Close Call, Secret Passage, Uncanny Dodge, Shadowy Ambush, Quick Jab, minor action to deal melee damage. That's actually pretty good if you use it on the Umber Hulk because it's Dex, and the Umber Hulk has Dex. Stalk, another Quick Jab, Riposte, so prevent 20 damage and make a melee attack that deals 10 damage. It's not bad. Parry, Near Miss, which actually untaps the creature, so that's pretty good. Means that you'd be able to play another defensive one if you had it. Fairy Fire, another copy of that. Another Near Miss. A Deep Wound, so that's I think our second one of those. Another Riposte, and that's it. Alright, so my basic thoughts for this faction. I love Drow, so again, I really like this faction a lot. The only problem that I honestly have with them is the sneak attack. Only because it's something that can't be done with the actual units that are in here. Now, Heart of Cormyr has an order card that says Level Up. And I think that one of those cards should have been included in here. Would have made it a lot better in terms of allowing you to use the sneak attack action on some of your higher level creatures. Like again, you could, if you were able to put it on an Umber Hulk, then that would make it so that the Umber Hulk on its own could use the sneak attack. That's the only thing that I think is somewhat disappointing. Other than that, I really like this faction. I like the creatures that are in there. You know, the colorations, I don't mind. The paint jobs, again, are pretty basic, and that's the way that the first two sets really were. Not to say that they got drastically better with the third set, which was Tyranny of Goblins, but again, this is, again, a really fun set. I really enjoy playing it. This is the only thing that I consider to be sort of a downside. And one of the big things with the Drow faction is the ability to be mobile. So having your spider creatures that are always scuttling, having cards that allow you to draw extra order cards, like the scheming and things like that. So it means that you typically will have more order cards, which will give you more things to do. It also is nice that you have more order cards in here that can be used by multiple creatures, even if they don't have the right ability score. Which makes sense, again, you know, that Drow would have Fairy Fire, spiders could use webs, and things like that. So, again, not a bad set. Actually, I really enjoy playing this faction. It's probably the, I'd say, unfortunately, I mean, there's only 5 sets, so you have to kind of pick and choose your favorites. This one would be a little bit under Heart of Cormyr for me, so this would probably be my 4th favorite of the 5. But that still is a good candidate, you know, and I don't mind ever playing this. I never feel like I'm stuck playing the Drow, which is always a good thing. You know, you don't want to, you know, have a faction that you don't enjoy. This one's a lot of fun. Just one minor design thing that I've considered making a house rule for and changing its level. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you enjoyed the look at the Sting of Lolth Drow faction for Dungeon Command. Be sure to come back tomorrow when we're going to be taking a look at the Tyranny of Goblins.